And hello, everyone. Welcome to the Real Estate Show on KCMX News Media 880. Pete Belcaster and Joe Brett, the Real Estate Guys, with you today. And thanks for joining us here on KCMX and, of course, on YouTube at realestateshowOregon.com. That's Joe sitting over there down in the corner. We've got two terrific guests here today to talk about what's happening in the Oregon legislature. What should we be aware of as private property rights of owners, of rent? Well, we talked about renters, but about the future of what's going to happen with real estate issues. There's lots of them. I mean, think about how many there are across the spectrum, and these two folks are really on top of it, right?
And how many years and how many shows have we done? At each legislative session, we have great new material to talk about and to educate our
listeners. Never run out of material today. This is Greg Addington, who's next to me here. He's the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors Government Affairs Coordinator. Nice to have you here, Greg. This is your busy time of the year, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks, Pete. It's really great to be here.
Yeah.
There's no shortage of things going on. It's a very busy time. We try to focus a lot locally on the issues here, but it's really overshadowed this time of year by what's going on in Salem.
Do you travel up and down? I mean, do you go to Salem a lot and actually talk with folks and things like that, or are you mostly here? How does that work?
I'm mostly here. The great thing about this association, really from local to the national, is the levels. And so there's professional staff in Salem that really monitor all these legislative initiatives, the bills. I focus more locally, but again, this time of year, it's all hands on deck.
It's all statewide.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of back and forth, and there's really the volunteers, people like Stacey, spend a lot of time going back and forth, more than I do.
Well, I know you have to have. It takes many volunteers to make a group work, and Stacey Boals, you certainly epitomize that, and I really admire you. She's the past president of the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, and again, head of the Political Action Committee and other things as well. How did you get in? I mean, getting involved in political parts of this in real estate is really tricky. I mean, I admire you for doing it.
Well, somebody said once that if you don't get involved with politics, politics will get you.
Yeah.
Good quote.
So close. Yeah. The quote was kind of close, but no, it just comes to a point where you realize that there are a lot of issues that affect the real estate industry, and they're not going to go away. They're not going to get solved. They're not going to get passed. Nothing without grassroots help from the board, from the volunteers.
How long have you been involved with that part of the business?
I don't know.
Long time?
I've been involved with the board. This year, I will have been licensed for 30 years, and I have been involved for 30 years.
Well, you've seen a lot of legislative sessions, let me tell you that, come through. I remember covering them in the 80s and 90s lots of times, and it always was just amazed me how they get caught up in some of these bills and how they get strung out and changed and whatever.
And pulls
how it's democracy, it's messy, and all those kinds of things. What do you? We talked a lot last week on our show about Senate Bill 608, which was the rent control bill, and that has changed. Let me just ask you one question on that, especially you, Stacey, is that we've heard all sorts of different things. Landlords are going to sell everything. Tenants now are in control of everything. I mean, it just goes on and on and on about this. And overall, what do you think about what's happened?
I think it just needs some time to go through the process and calm down and get rid of some of the warts and all this. There'll probably be some changes. I've read all 24 pages of the bill, and I had to go back over and read page 1 over and over and over again. There's going to be a lot of interpretation, and I think you were right in your opening. It's just kind of like it was passed with an emergency clause. It's in effect now. It's, hey, property managers, go for it. We're not a lot of guidance necessarily, but it's going to have to take some time to work through the system just to see where we need to tweak it.
Yeah, I just freaked out because remember, realtors, and if you're buying and selling, you have to be aware because you may have a tenant in your home or living in the place that you're buying or selling or whatever. All of a sudden, this new rule came in, and it's not the way it was.
And you just have to make sure you know what the exceptions are and what the rules are, because it varies between multifamily, whether or not the building's 15 years old or not. If you live on the property yourself, if it's something you're planning on moving into, yada yada yada.
So you got to be aware of it. The biggest thing is ask your realtors, but boy, you want to be smart when it comes to this, because tenants will know the rules. I mean, that's what we've come to find out over the years, is that tenants know how to play that game, and sometimes landlords don't. The biggest thing, let somebody professional do it for you. Don't manage your own. I still come to that conclusion after all the time. Greg, what are some of the other things that are up there that are coming up? I've heard just talk mortgage interest deduction. Is that actually a bill up there to do away, or tell me what's going on with that?
Yeah, there is a bill. It's actually House Bill 3349.
Okay.
And it's a proposal that would either phase out or get rid of the mortgage interest rate deduction for tax purposes, depending on your income. So
depending on your income.
Right.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So
that's the second part of it. Yeah. The first part is the second home thing, but yeah, there's a second part that nobody talks about.
And what is the second part then, Stacey? What's about
exactly
that?
what he's talking about.
Okay.
So for example, if you the way I read the bill, and again, this is not my job. That we have the governmental affairs staff in Salem, but obviously we try to keep our members informed about what's going on with this. If you make over $200,000, between $200,000 and $250,000, there's a phase out of your interest rate deduction.
Okay.
Mortgage interest deduction.
It's targeted toward high income earners.
Yeah. Well, and so I think that's the selling point of it. Over $250,000, but this could be combined income, the way I read it, of husband and wife as well. So. Above $250,000, it outright goes away.
You said it phases it out over a period of time.
For the 200 to 250, but over 250,000, it's gone.
It's just gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
It's faded. It's faded out for those below that then.
Correct.
Over time. Oh, that's like you and I and you and all of us then. Well, that's not very good.
No,
I don't like that.
And the thing is, you know, I think it's sort of sold as, well, this is just rich people or people with second homes. But when you really start breaking down the numbers and look at combined family incomes and things like that, it's the middle class. I mean, it's going to hit a lot of the middle class pretty hard, I think. And so it's up for hearing. It hasn't been passed yet. Actually, today there was a hearing on the bill. So I don't know the outcome of that yet. But it's something that the realtors are certainly keeping an eye on.
And I would certainly think that the PAC, the political action committees, are really. I mean, this is like isn't this like the holy grail of home ownership? I mean, isn't this kind of like it's been in the tax code, the way I understand it, since it was created, right?
One of the big incentives.
In 1911, it's been in the tax code.
And there's there's two committees actually with Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. There's Government Affairs, and Government Affairs basically, follows issues, does that type of thing. Political Action Committee, we are more in advocating and working with candidates.
Candidates.
Candidates and the candidates that are pro property rights, pro real estate ownership, and that type of thing. So, but obviously the two committees meld at one point or another.
What's the local legislator response to this mortgage interest deduction bill that's out there? Tell me, what are you hearing from our local folks?
When it was dropped, what was that, a week ago Friday?
Yeah.
I don't know about the legislators themselves, but the realtors weren't happy. Basically, because like I said, that's a huge incentive for first-time home buyers, even and some first-time home buyers can be substantial, and so as far as income and such, and so we weren't real happy.
Well, it takes away the biggest incentive to purchase, right? Now, we talk about...
And they are down. These are first-time home buyers. Well, first off, they've saved up. They've worked through a really tough market where prices have risen.
If that goes away, it's going to be hard.
It really cuts into that razor-thin margin for them to have home ownership, which is a base element of the future of our country.
But we've talked on our show for years that the average renter in this country has a net worth of about $6,000, and a homeowner in this country has a net worth of over $200,000. And if you take away the main incentive for that, who's going to get hurt by that the most? It's going to be people trying to get out of their situation, to improve their life, to create some wealth for themselves. And I can't imagine that legislature taking that incentive away. I mean, I think the realtors, this is a very powerful group.
Well, and what's next?
Okay.
What's next? First
beyond that,
first it's mortgage interest deduction. Then is it going to be their property tax write-offs?
Property tax deduction.
And see, this goes back to what we were working on last session with Measure 104, which was basically, it takes a 3/5 supermajority to pass anything that has to do with your taxes,
related.
And our legislatures were pushing things through and calling them just either fees or reducing other things to get revenue. And so, to me, this is just one other way to.
It's also horrible doublespeak for a legislature that prides itself and sells itself on standing up for little guys and protecting the interests.
That's what I
and
think.
It just flies in the face of.
I hope that.
It makes it hard to sort out.
I hope certainly that Senator Golden, that Representative Marsh, Representative Wallen, and the whole group from Southern Oregon, I think everyone's going to be watching this thing, because that is watching them, because that is absolutely taking the middle class and gutting them, and that's all that they talk about not doing. Let's see what happens with that. That's a big thing.
And I'll just add, Senator Golden's a co-sponsor of this legislation, so he's definitely supporting this. And again, I think all this is done in the name of, there is a housing crisis in the state. There's no question about it. And so there's a different view of how do we solve that. But I just thought,
Greg, how does that even come close to solving that, Senator Golden? How does taking deduction away from the incentive to do that?
To take that money and supposedly put it into affordable housing of some type. But if you're not making housing affordable, it doesn't make sense putting it into something.
They always do great with that.
Well, that's just...
I just thought a couple of stats for you on this. Over 565,000 Oregonians utilized the mortgage interest deduction in the last taxable year. More than 70% of homeowners will utilize it at some point in their ownership of a home. And then on the second home thing, so it completely eliminates the deduction for second homeowners, because I think we tend to think, well, that's wealthy people with a vacation house somewhere. But the fact is, according to
you don't have to be wealthy to own a second home either, by the way. You know, that's
you
people
think about Ashland. There's a lot of second homes there. People who go back and forth, and because of the theater and that, but it's also people in transition.
And they buy those in part because of the deductions, right? So that's going to be that would be eliminated from that.
Right, and so I don't, what they're going to gain from that, I'm not sure. 5% of those who utilize the deduction do so through a second home, and 5%. Of that 5%, 25 to 50 are transitional purchasers. So these are people have a change in jobs, a family situation,
trying to sell their home somewhere else, and now their new home is considered their second home.
Yeah, I love taking money from this to put it, as you say, Stacey, take it from this. We're going to put it. We're going to make affordable housing money over here available, and we know how that goes in terms of building affordable housing with government subsidies in Medford. Go down and look at the millions of dollars that go into those types of housing as well. That just makes me want to just like cringe, doesn't it, when you hear about some of that? When you start delving down into it, that would devastate the markets, don't you think?
It could, hurt.
Yeah, it's
I mean, it really would.
And again, you guys have touched on it, but the purpose of that is to promote home ownership. That's good for our country. It's good for our communities.
It's a cornerstone of our future and our success, and it always has been.
Well, they always talk about people, individuals and people standing up for things, and I'm glad that the RPAC is there, and that individuals, homeowners, have to stand up for this as well and need to let legislators know this is absolutely not acceptable. We got a break coming up here. We only got to one bill. We didn't get to anywhere. We got a lot more to go. Don't you dare go away. Today we're with Greg Addington, is the Government Affairs Coordinator for the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, and Stacey Boals, the head of the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors Political Action Committee, and a whole bunch of other things as well. We're coming right back to KCMX after this. Welcome back to the Real Estate Show on KCMX News Media 880. Pete Belcaster and Joe Brett with you here today. Thank you for joining us here as we're moving along into March and April, May, those 3 busy real estate months of the year. Next week, we'll talk about mortgage interest rates, what they're doing. They're hovering around that 4.3. Oh, my goodness, they've dropped a little bit again. So we'll talk about that with Guy Giles next week here on the show. Today, Stacey Boals is here. She's the vice chair of the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors Political Action Committee and a past president of RVAR as well, longtime realtor, Coldwell banker down in Ashland. Greg Addington is the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors Government Affairs Coordinator. We're talking about bills in the legislature that may affect home ownership, real estate transactions, whatever around. Tell me one about that I've read would change the independent contractor status of everybody, I guess, in the state, including realtors, including lots of other things. Is that kind of crazy?
Realtors.
Not realtors.
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
Basically, this happens quite a bit, and we've been run through the ringer, run through the wash, tested, retested, everything, and pretty much we've got the backing of our legislatures that we are independent contractors. I think my personal opinion is that part of this came up because like Uber and Lyft, and these are like unknown situations about are they really working for themselves or do they work for that company?
Right.
And so it has to be looked at again.
Yeah. Okay, so you're okay with that when coming to look at that?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that this is one of those things because the realtor community has such a great relationship, such a powerful group in Salem. I think you know, easy to get swept up in this if you don't have people there saying, hey, wait a
Absolutely,
second. You know, you're talking about
You
a
guys
lot of
have gone
professionals.
through this before, yeah.
But there are other professionals that I think still need to be worried about this. I mean, I'm a consultant, private consultant.
Sure.
You know, taxi drivers, lawyers, doctors, in a lot of cases.
I mean, Joe and I, we have sports announcers
I'm
that
just
are
thinking
independent
that,
My husband
Yeah.
has a
Table Rock
taxi
Sports.
company.
Yeah.
He's an
Taxi
independent
company.
contractor.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if they redefine that, okay, well, that's to keep an eye.
That's
We'll
House
keep an
Bill-
eye on that one.
House Bill 2498, if people
It's the
want
House
to
bill
look
around that. One of the advantages that seniors have is a senior property tax deferral. Many times I have clients, you know, sometimes they don't tell their children that they've done this, but generally, you know, if you're 62, you can defer your property taxes until you sell the house. I saw once a $35,000 tax bill came. The kids didn't know about it, that the parents did that, but it was okay. So that type of thing out there, is that going to be renewed? I think it's a great deal for seniors. So tell me what you think about that, Greg. Is it going to be renewed, or is it up for grabs again?
Yeah, well, right now it's set to expire in 2021. So
Okay.
trying to be ahead of the curve here a little bit when you talk about these legislative sessions, short session, long session. House Bill 2151, supported by the Realtors, would extend that out to 2031. So it would just extend the sunset on that, which we all view as a good thing.
And why is that important, Joe? I mean, it's important because it allows seniors to stay in their home longer without having to pay sometimes $300-400 a month in property taxes, right? I mean, that's really what it's about.
Oftentimes talking about fixed incomes that struggle sometimes to keep up with maintenance and things, and updates to the home to be able to stay and continue to live and age in place.
Yeah, because we want people to stay as long as they can in their homes, because they have no. First of all, they have no place to go. I mean, where are we going to go? And so that property tax deferral is something. If you're a senior or your folks or something, is something you may want to look at. A lot of people do it, but just make sure that you know you're doing it, and don't be any surprises at the end. Because the worst thing is to get a big old tax bill. You know, you don't want to do that.
I didn't think that much about it when I got my license 10 years ago. Now that I turned 60 this year, I'm going to file that one away.
Hey.
I'm going to file that one away.
Are there any land use bills that, I mean, every session there's always something that's tinkering with Oregon's land use laws in some respect, something along the way. Is there anything out there, Greg?
Yeah,
Stacey,
well, one thing that's bound to get some attention is House Bill 2001, and that would basically allow for multifamily dwellings in single, you know, currently zoned single family. So if you have a lot, you have a single family subdivision or something like that.
Okay.
All of a sudden now, this bill would allow in certain, there's population requirements, but it would definitely cover these counties in Southern Oregon. You know, you could have a duplex go up or a fourplex, something that formerly was not allowed. And again,
it was not. We couldn't do it before.
It was
couldn't do it
instead of
before.
single-family residential, it would give it the possibility of putting a multifamily building up.
On that single-family lot.
And my beautiful view of the sunsets
What
could change dramatically.
What do you think of that, Stacey? I'm curious what you think of that.
You know, what I can see, there's a lot of issues with it, like CC&Rs for the neighborhood.
Okay,
if
sure,
CC&Rs say, no, you can only do this, who supersedes who?
Right.
You know, so there's a lot of questions.
State law would probably say they would supersede a local thing there. It would allow dwellings. I mean, additional units. It would allow. I mean, what does it?
multifamily, so
Just multifamily
duplex,
units.
fourplex, something
You
like
have
that.
a subdivision of single-family houses, and there's a vacant lot still there. There's a potential somebody could put even a two-story fourplex on it.
But it doesn't address the issue of allowing more units onto current lots
What
or
if-
current
what if
areas,
it-
Not
right?
more units.
What if
but
it's an old?
multi-dwelling.
What if it's an older property? I want to take the single family residence that's on there and put a fourplex on there.
I think that could happen.
That would dramatically change neighborhoods, but it would also dramatically help us find housing
Exactly.
and affordable housing for people who are going to need and require that.
See,
that we know.
that's just it right there, Joe. I mean, we're concerned with a lot of these bills, obviously, like rent control and some of these other things we've talked about not. I mean, we really think the way you're going to deal with the housing problem, the affordable housing estate, is supply, right? You have to have the supply and the buildable lands. So some of these are tough ones. But those are things that we generally think, if we're increasing the supply, that's a good thing. One thing I'll say about all the rent control and those bills that have, it's sort of made the legislature, they've done these. That rent control, frankly, was shoved through
Absolutely,
and done.
sure.
And they have to now, I think, look at some of these land use issues that have restricted supply, because they can't, they have no credibility if they don't, by saying, well, we're trying to address affordability. Okay, you did your thing, but let's get real now. Let's look at some of the land use laws and see about increasing the actual supply. So I think, according to the folks I talked to in Salem, there's a whole bunch of bills, generally speaking, that look at land use, taxation, incentives for building, things like that are all, liable to get mashed together into one.
And something coming that we don't even know yet.
We had almost a 20-year process for our regional problem solving, and we were amongst the first in Oregon in our Southwest region here that got our cities on board and got through that process. Look at how much time and staff effort that took from the cities and the county and everybody involved. And what did we end up with? Not enough land that we knew we needed more, but you can only bring in so much of the.
Hey, here's a good one, Joe.
Dude, each of those MD1 through 9s were just amazing. The restrictions and some of the things that held them.
Well,
in
everything's
check
being
all
built.
around them.
Everything being built is still single family. What happened to remember the Southeast Medford plan? That was wasn't that 10,000 homes? It was supposed to have all sorts of multi-units and
estate lots down to multi-family lots, and I mean, you can go down to the city, you can get a copy of it. Full color.
Yeah, I remember
exactly
seeing the maps of
everything
it.
is, all up Cherry Lane. A lot of that still hasn't been annexed into the city. I mean, I lived up there off of Ariel Heights, and I was in this weird little urban growth boundary where I had city on one side, city on the other, and I looked down at what was supposed to be multifamily, still hasn't been developed, and so a lot of it's just a matter of
the plans are there.
Why hasn't it? Why hasn't it been? I mean, it just seems that there's all these
incentives. The builders who didn't build for so long.
We're talking about demand, though,
and
here.
that plan was done prior to our 2005.
Okay, that's true.
Crash. So,
and the builders, when they came out, they had to build to what people were going to buy and needed right now and catch up with that demand. We needed 3-2s. We needed some family housing, and now, hopefully, they can have enough wherewithal to move on to those next projects.
I mean, I don't know what affordable housing is supposed to look like or be, but certainly smaller units and multi-units together would solve. You're talking about supply issues. That seems to be the only way you're going to ever get to this, because all we're doing right now is just building 3 and 2 places that I know they're in demand, but it's not solving the other problem.
Well, you touched on something earlier. If there's a bright side to any of this, one of the ballots that we supported last session was ballot measure 102, and that opened it up to where you could work with not just government affordable housing entities, but you could work with private entities to help build affordable housing.
Has anything come of that? You guys didn't know of any of that? I mean, I know it just passed, but has anything come of it?
Yeah, I don't know of any examples yet, but it's going to open the door. I mean, it's going to take a little time, but it now allows municipalities to work with a private developer to do things, efficiently and in a better way.
But we've had people on the show who've developed across the state. Private sector affordable housing units by the boatloads, and we said, "Why don't you come to Medford? I mean, you're in Bend, you're in Portland. Come here." And the difference in cost of the government subsidized units versus these was astronomical. It blew us away when we listened to that.
And to our local government's credit, they're trying delayed systems development charges. They're trying to find ways to stimulate it and work with the industry, and that's really encouraging that at the local level we can get some traction and get some things done.
Then we got the state,
and what's a bummer to me is that we're not seeing many people trying to take advantage of the new kind of city rules of allowing additional dwelling units on your properties or over the garages or whatever. We're not seeing many applications. I'm surprised at that.
What would happen if I built on and built more? I'd have more grandkids over and stay longer.
Well, it's not for you.
That would work for me.
It's not for you, but it certainly would solve a problem of where do we go? Because seniors, it's really an issue.
An opportunity maybe for property owners to augment their income.
Increase the value of your property. My goodness, I mean, that's almost a simple thing. I mean, it's a win-win.
And to that end, there is a bill.
Of course there is.
There comes Greg.
Yes,
there's a bill for that. Senate Bill 88 would allow counties to say whether or not they're going to allow accessory dwelling units in rural residential
rural
which we
rural
haven't
care is
had.
like that.
Yeah.
That would be enormous.
We got some room out there, and not penned in by the urban growth boundaries and things that regulate our cities so
or
closely.
parking, or
All
things
those
like that.
things. Yeah, good point. Yeah,
Farms,
Yeah.
ranches,
yeah.
small towns that are
have to deal
suffering
with
because
They
wells.
can
they
augment
can't-
their
you know?
To
income,
deal
their
with
property.
wells
yeah.
and septics too.
Yeah, well, that's true too. Yeah,
Well, you know, you've got a 3-bedroom septic. How are they gonna
You have to put
treat putting another dwelling on the
have to
property?
put some money
There's a lot
into
of
it, yeah.
little
you got to
things.
change the septic
Yeah.
out if you're going to add these
Yeah,
things
it's
gonna
because
have
the
to make
septics
sense.
are. Yeah, I mean you can do those things.
Yeah.
And certainly there are lenders out there who will help, but it solves problems. So anyway, it's a way to get to
Those
it.
closer
I really think
into
so.
the city limits could have some real potential there for
Well,
people
there
that
is
don't want to
still-
go.
There are some rural that
Yeah.
are hooked up to city services too,
Yeah,
so that would
yeah.
be that would
Yeah.
be
I
ideal.
wish there were more of it.
Be some
You know
good
that?
opportunity there.
I love where you've got, where you got the areas where you've got, public sewers now, but you have private wells. Why? Why are we still doing that? Isn't that time anyway, those
That's a
are all just
question-
little things that
Infrastructure.
Question for another show. Yeah.
Have a show on infrastructure.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Well, we got a break coming up here. We're having an interesting conversation today with Greg Addington, the Government Affairs Coordinator for the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, Stacey Boals, the Vice Chair of the Political Action Committee of RVAR. They're certainly involved with what's happening in Salem. It's a busy time. Legislative sessions can change communities, can change a lot of things, and so we thank them for being there and watching out for us. We got a break coming up here. One more segment to go. Don't forget you can check out any of our past shows at realestateshoworegon.com. We're coming right back after this. Welcome back to the Real Estate Show on KCMX News Media 880. Pete and Joe, the real estate guys, with you. Next week, we'll talk mortgage interest rates with Guy Giles, and we'll give you an update there, and as well as market stats. Almost the end of the month, Joe, and we'll look at what's been going on. A lot of activity, a lot of lock boxes being opened. People fly. I had clients fly in here from Hawaii, last weekend. We had a great time coming here.
Aren't you blowing up?
Yeah, there was a lot. Our secret is out. People want to come here.
Beautiful place. Yeah.
For so many different reasons, and it's a wonderful place. Today we're with Greg Addington and Stacey Boals. We're talking a little politics today. The Oregon legislature is in session, and they always have bills to affect real estate,
We have
private
not run out
property
of
rights,
topics.
owners, and everything else like that. Were there any bills that you guys know of right now? We're dealing with construction rules or changing any of that. We've watched over the years as we've become green construction, the rules have changed so much. Is there anything out there still that you know of, Greg or Stacey?
Well, I'm quite certain there is something out there, but
You haven't got it yet.
I don't know what it is.
Okay, all right. There will be something out there. I know that. There wood stoves
Yeah.
are always a topic. Oil tanks. Underground things. You got to move this stuff. You have inspections.
You see, I prefer not to deal with those in property transactions.
You can't put your head in the sand. I just don't. It doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. Okay.
Yeah, and so
mystery oil tanks.
Yeah.
we have things that need to be changed out, and just for reasons you talked about. We do have concerns with air quality. That's something that's always an issue around Southern Oregon. Wood stoves are a big deal. So there's pellet stoves, more efficient wood stoves than some of the old ones we have. So if we want to have a state policy to get rid of these older wood stoves, for example, well, let's create some incentives to do so.
And
so there's conversations going on with the realtor community and many others to continue a fund that would help people replace those older wood stove. Also, septic tanks, failing septic tanks. Again,
really, there is some help with that.
Yeah,
actually?
and that's actually does have a bill number, Senate Bill 756.
Think of how many septic systems are in the state. Think of how many in Jackson County.
Especially the ones that are 20, 25 years or older.
And I love it when people say, how's your septic? Oh, my septic tank works. My septic system works great.
Always.
I've never had a problem with it. I love those. Those are my. Where is it? Well, I really don't
I
know.
don't know.
It's somewhere over here.
There's some green grass over there.
Septics can really be a problem. Okay.
And the idea again is Department of Environmental Quality. It gives them a pool of money to use when they go out and they find these failing septics. A lot of times these are people that it could be older folks or people that may not have
Just
the
may-
ability
yeah.
to deal with some of these things. And so we
Maybe
want to
it's
clean it
installed
up.
wrong. I mean, you
Yeah,
name it,
yeah.
and you have those potential. So yes, you want to check those things.
Well, the buyer's lender is going to look
Because
at
you're
that type
gonna
of stuff
look
too.
at it.
Yeah, and they're going to say, no, we want it to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if the seller doesn't have the money for it to help, so yeah, it's
Yeah.
really.
That's good
It's
to
a
have a
good
little.
thing.
And especially,
Okay, that's
you're
all right
right.
with
And
that.
older, you're at the end. You're at the end of life, and so is the septic,
Yeah.
and that's a big ticket item to take on,
Right.
or try to replace in what may be a limited income to work with.
Right. You just don't want to get into a situation where people are walking away from stuff because there's no way to deal with
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
there's funds available
Yeah.
to clean those things up.
But good to know.
Well, infrastructures. You hit it right. We can do a lot better with infrastructure in our rural areas and stuff. I think in some of this instead of this mess we have with septics and can be problems and things like that. But it's never
takes
going to
money.
go. It's never going to go away. The same way when you have
Messy subjects like septics. That's
yeah,
perfect.
it's not going to go away out of that thing. Well, we're almost out of time here, so I want to give you just a chance here to kind of sum up what we're kind of going through today. There's a lot going on, and we don't know. A lot of this stuff doesn't get passed, and a lot of it loses itself in committee and lobbyists. I mean, all sorts of things. Realtors have, I know, a big day in Salem every session. That's coming up, I think, in early April, right?
April 2nd.
April 2nd, okay.
Realtor Day at the Capitol. Last 2 years ago, there were over 800 realtors that showed up from around the state, shooting for over 1,000.
I actually went.
Yeah,
I went
and
there.
they-
It makes a
they-
difference. It really
they
does.
listen when we're clogging their hallways and jamming the elevators, and basically they can see that we're a voice.
And they should, because it is a big voice.
And
When
you
when
corner them
look at-
anywhere
when-
you
when
can.
you,
You corner them anywhere you can find them in that
Right.
Capitol building. That's
You
good
do.
work.
If they're not in their office, you find them.
yeah. Well, and realtors have a lot to say. This industry is such a great driving force in the economy of our state. When you add everything in, new construction, titles, I mean you name it, and it's a huge economic
Well, it
engine.
just comes down to the basic right of home ownership too. We strive to make sure that everybody basically has a roof over their head.
Has the
Fair-
ability,
fair-
and has
Or
the
has-
or
can
has the
have the
ability
ability
to
to purchase a
purchase
home.
their own home.
Yeah.
Fair and equitable access, and
Yes.
really important that the work that is done at that legislative level by our PACs, by our specialists,
Yeah.
by those people that are in there, that's really representing our clients. That's protecting our clients, their interests, and their investments over
Well,
many years.
It is. It's the way you generate
Right.
generate wealth for your family
And
way
we're
for
not
yourself.
So essential.
these, or we're not ours.
No.
We are the realtor party, and
Yeah.
we basically we focus on, like I said, property rights,
Yeah.
getting legislatures elected that are pro property rights, are pro home ownership, are pro
Yeah.
real estate, and that's our goal.
It's beautiful because we
It's
don't
for
have
our
to get messed up in
clients.
what the
Yeah.
letter
Get in
is.
there,
It's
you
the
know.
biggest purchase that people make in their lifetime.
And most important in their life.
And you
That's
wanna-
been in mind.
You better have an incentive and continue to do that. And I'm hoping a lot of that stuff that we talked about just kind of filters away, and it doesn't see the light
We
of
should-
day.
we should
But
send- we should
you're-
send the
but
link to
Greg
Salem
is there,
this
yeah,
week.
But Greg is there keeping. You know what's going on there.
The other thing I will just say, Pete, is that there are things to worry about for sure, and we've talked about some of those things. But again, the flip side of that, so Realtor Day at the Capitol, or any time you can reach out and talk with an elected official, there are other things they need to know. They're not experts in all these things, so I mean, for the most part, I think they really appreciate hearing from people, whether they always agree or not. I think they really do appreciate it. And like I said, I think there are some opportunities to go along with some of these concerning issues. There are opportunities to open the door to more supply, to really, in our view, address housing issues in the state. I heard somebody say the other day, the only thing Oregonians hate worse than sprawl is density. And the only thing they
That's a
hate worse
good
than
one.
density is sprawl. So
That's a good one.
So-
That's-
That's us.
yeah.
my deal is every place is unique. Southern Oregon is not the same as the Willamette
No,
Valley.
Like
no,
And so
it
we
is
need
not.
to have that kind of control down here to
Local
make
control.
local decisions, local
Yep.
control. And I think that's something for anyone, legislators, to hear. It'd be a good thing.
And the Oregon
Okay.
Association of Realtors sends out calls to action, and they send them out to us, and basically it makes it real easy. One click and a letter goes to our legislature. But those aren't just limited to the real estate agents. I mean, if I post it on Facebook, my friends can do it also.
Very good.
So
Yeah, good thought.
that type of thing. So it takes a village.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of people, and we're there on behalf of our clients.
Which is everybody in our
Which is
communities.
everybody. Anybody could be a potential
For
client.
the health and life of our communities
From
too.
every
so,
walk of life,
yeah.
political party, religion, unknown to man on this earth. They're our clients and our homeowners, and we have to protect them.
Yep, the session continues. Thank goodness they have to be out of there by July the 1st, I think it is. So we've got a few more months to go. So Stacey and Greg, you guys keep your eyes going, okay? And
Good
maybe
work,
we'll
you
come
two.
back again when it's all over and see what
With our battle scars.
what went, what left, what didn't, what worked, what didn't, and where we stand, because it
Stacey
will affect.
she keeps coming back for more, so
Yeah.
we could keep her sending her right back up there.
It affects everybody,
Yep.
what you do. So good luck
Good
to
work.
you.
Thank
Thank you for
both.
being
Thanks
here.
for good show.
That'll do it for the Real Estate Show here today. Thank you for being with us. We'll be back with you next Saturday here on KCMX and YouTube as well. Have a great week, and God bless you all.